first day of practice. Imola is the third race of the season, and it's time for Senna to show his mettle. He didn't even finish the first two races in Brazil and Japan, both being won by his latest challenger, the young German Michael Schumacher. And yet, as his friends confirm, Ayrton seems rather distant and detached with regard to his unusually lackluster performances. At the age of 34, after 10 fabulous years, is the obsessive loner revealing a more human side?
He was getting bored. We have to admit the truth. He was getting bored, and indeed he said so. That year, TF1 benefited from his commentary over a single lap with the onboard camera. Ayrton recorded his commentary on the Friday morning during a reconnaissance lap, as it were. He talked, he would say. Right, we're leaving the pits, we're coming into this curve, we're changing into fourth gear, we have to brake here, the car has to do this or that, etc.
In the middle of his technical analysis, Ayrton Senna utters a few astounding words. A message for the Frenchman Alain Prost, his eternal rival, now retired from the track.
A special hello to our dear friend Alain in France. We all miss you, Alain.
There were all the others, but the 22 or 23 others didn't count. Only his former deadly enemy counted, the man who was no longer there, who had become a commentator, who was doing something else. And we realized that the Formula One life was no longer the same for Ayrton Senna.
All the problems he had during the start of the season made him aware of the extent to which he really missed Prost. He no longer had that frame of reference that his great rival, Prost, had provided.
Prost and Senna, a duel that has never been seen before in the history of Formula One. A combat at times superb, at others bitter and pernicious. It reached its height in the late 80s when both men were teammates at McLaren. It was open warfare between two immense champions, so close and yet so distant.
Senna's whole approach was different to that of Prost. Prost saw a race not as an ultimate goal, but as a step towards the world title. It took years for Senna to understand that. He saw a race as the race, that he would compete in as an end in itself. So he had to win it. If he didn't win, he wasn't even interested in scoring any points.
A hard-fought duel resembling a Greek tragedy. The Japanese Grand Prix in 1989, a race to decide the world title. Senna starts badly but catches up with Prost. The Frenchman blocks the curve and pushes both cars off the track. Prost abandons. Senna sets off again and wins the race. But judged to be responsible for the accident, Senna is disqualified and Prost is world champion. After the race, Senna openly expresses his resentment, and the hostility between the two men only deepens.
I never caused the accident in Suzuka. I was blamed for everything, and I was penalized for everything. I was treated like a criminal. So, of course, I thought about stopping. I thought about going home, not coming to Australia. But as I said before, racing, competing is in my blood. It's part of me, it's part of my life. I've been doing it all my life. And it stands up before anything else.
1 year later, hundreds of millions of viewers prepare to witness a second decisive race at Suzuka. Prost is now with Ferrari, and this time he must win to become champion. He makes the better start, but at the very first curve, Senna makes contact. Both cars are out, and by provoking the accident, Senna is world champion.
Our fratricidal battle was a war which served us both in some ways. It was in a sporting context, and perhaps went beyond that context from time to time. But it was so magnificent, so incredible. It will certainly be a long time before we see anything like it, and perhaps we never will. There have been very few, if any, such rivalries in the past.
A special hello to our dear friend Alain in France. We all miss you, Alain.
And so, on this Friday morning in Imola, is Ayrton Senna overcome with nostalgia? The man who has to learn to win without Alain Prost, as the Frenchman prepares to experience the Grand Prix as a commentator alongside Jean-Louis Moncey.
So peace had been made, and now, with the benefit of hindsight, I think that if there was a sign of destiny, then that was it.
Friday, April 29th, the first official qualifying session begins. As usual, Ayrton Senna records the best lap time. The doctor-in-chief of the Grand Prix, Giuseppe Piana, is focused on the extraordinary mechanical ballet when at 1:20 an accident marks the beginning of a nightmarish weekend.
We're arriving at the entrance to the Variante Bassa, the exact spot where, just a few minutes after the beginning of practice, Barrichello's car came in at 240 kilometers per hour. It skidded into the gravel and hit the wall. The car flipped over.
Rubens Barrichello's car is pulverized. The young Brazilian is taken to the racetrack's medical center. The violence of the crash inspires the very worst fears, particularly for his patron in Formula One, Ayrton Senna.
I go into the emergency ward, and who do I see there but Ayrton Senna? I asked him, how did you get in here? Through there, in the back. He got in by climbing over a 2-meter-high gateway. Then he says, I want to see him. I want to see Rubens. We can't. I want to see him.
Voglio vedere Ruben. Non si può, voglio vedere.
Tá bem, ele tá bem. Ele tomou um susto, ele tá meio, chocado, mas ele tá bem. Ele não tem nada quebrado, aparentemente. Tá falando normal e
The Brazilian journalists hang on Senna's every word as he reassures the nation about his compatriot's condition. Symbolic of the status he has achieved in his country as an icon. Through his flair, his victories and his love for the national flag, Ayrton Senna embodies a Brazil triumphant. He is their finest ambassador.
Ele passou a cada vitória usar a bandeira, mostrando o patriotismo dele pela nação, que é uma nação que tem tudo para dar certo e tinha para dar certo, como está dando certo. E então ele mostrava isso para os brasileiros e a nação naquele momento precisava exatamente disso daí.
Whenever possible, the champion returns to his native land to recharge his batteries, vacationing in luxurious villas with a millionaire's toys, relaxation and water sports.